Chris Kirschner. It's been a very, very busy week for you. I hope you're doing well. Welcome into the game in T-Town.
Thanks for having me.
Busy week for you, man. Alabama's picking up a lot of momentum.
Yeah, a ton of momentum on the recruiting trail. 3 commitments this week. First, on Sunday, 4-star tackle Amari Kite chose Alabama over Auburn and other schools. He was definitely one of those guys that coming out of A-Day a couple weekends ago, I thought he was actually going to go public with his decision then, but I was told that he was waiting on filming up a video to announce his decision. That was the delay for him. Same thing goes with DJ Dale, the 4-star defensive tackle who committed yesterday. Both Kite and Dale committed to Alabama at A-Day, but they decided to wait to reveal their decisions via video. And then earlier this week, 4-star outside linebacker Kevin Harris out of Grayson High School committed to Alabama over Miami. I mean, 3 very big pickups for the Crimson Tide, 3 very important targets for Alabama in the 2019 class. So now that they're officially on board, those guys can now start recruiting other players.
Let me go to Amari Kite here for just a couple of minutes. Describe what you see in this young man.
Yeah, I mean, I saw Kite in action when I was at Thompson High School when they played Mountain Brook last fall. He's a very gifted player. He actually shot up the recruiting rankings quite recently. I think he's rated right outside the top 50 overall players in this class. I mean, he's 6'7", 315 pounds. Definitely someone who could play, that coveted left tackle spot on the offensive line. Very gifted player. There really aren't many flaws with his game from what I've seen.
Looks like he's definitely a left tackle in your opinion, though?
Yeah, I do think so. I mean, he definitely has the size to play left tackle in college.
You look at Alabama, and I know a stat came out a couple of days ago. 26 offensive linemen and defensive linemen have been drafted from the University of Alabama since 2010. It looks like, once again, they're going to put a heavy emphasis on the trenches here under Nick Saban.
Yeah, definitely, especially on the offensive line. Alabama now has 3 commitments in this 2019 class with Kite, 5-star tackle Pierce Quick, and 4-star tackle Tanner Bowles. I think Alabama is hoping to sign 2 more in this 2019 class, the top targets being 5-star center Clay Webb and 5-star tackle Darnell Wright out of West Virginia. I mean, if Alabama gets those 2 guys and adds them to what they have now with Quick, Kite, and Bowles, on paper, it would be Alabama's highest-rated offensive line class in the Nick Saban era. I'm sure if we go back further than that, I mean, it would be the best offensive line class on paper in Alabama history. So there's definitely a chance that, Alabama gets both Webb and Wright to join that trio right now. I think Alabama's definitely the favorite for Webb when he commits in December. And then Wright visited Tuscaloosa back for A-Day, actually. So 2 weekends ago, he was in Tuscaloosa. I think this was his 3rd trip already to Alabama. I mean, that's a lot of trips for someone who lives in West Virginia. So Alabama is definitely looking really, really good on the offensive line.
Chris, do you feel like this momentum will continue for Alabama?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's going to be as fast-paced with the commitments as it's been over these past 2 weekends, just because, we were coming out of A-Day. A-Day is usually a prime time for these kids to make their decisions. I think during the week of A-Day, Alabama picked up 3 commitments as well. Shane Lee, Christian Williams, and then 2020 wide receiver DeZalen Worsham. So as far as commitments go, I don't think it's going to be as crazy as it's been over these past few weeks. I think Alabama's still going to gain momentum on the recruiting trail and, maybe some of these top targets, start naming Alabama in their top schools list and all that stuff. But as far as commitments go, I don't see any coming in these coming days or in the coming weeks because a lot of these guys that Alabama is still after, they don't have set commitment dates. A lot of them are planning on making their decisions before the summer starts. So, I mean, it's definitely a very good possibility that the majority of Alabama's 2019 class is wrapped up before Alabama takes the field against Louisville.
Chris, how many do you think the number will be? And this may be an impossible question to even know, but what number do you think Alabama will focus in on?
Yeah, I mean, I was told a few weeks ago that Alabama can get 27 in this 2019 class. They still have 2 spots remaining from the 2018 class. So unless Alabama is planning on taking a graduate transfer quarterback, I mean, they were trying to get Gardner Minshew, who committed to them, and then he chose Washington State shortly after he decided that Alabama just wasn't the right fit for him. So, I mean, if Alabama decides to get another graduate transfer, that would knock the number down for the 2019 class. So right now, it should be 27 guys that Alabama can sign in 2019.
You've had a chance to go out and study Tua Tagovailoa. You've had a chance to see Taulia. If people ask you to compare the two, how would you compare the two?
Yeah, I mean, for one, just for novice viewers, I mean, Tua is left-handed, Taulia is right-handed.
Sure.
And then Taulia is a pro-style prospect, and Tua is a dual-threat prospect. So just besides those points, I mean, Taulia is probably 2 inches shorter. I mean, he can definitely grow some more. But the thing about both those guys is that both of them are very accurate with the football. Both of them make very good decisions with the football. Both of them just have that calming sense about them. Like they just seem like they never get rattled no matter what happens. I mean, as evidenced in the national championship game when Tua gets sacked and he's facing 2nd and 26 and he throws a beautiful strike to Devontae Smith to beat Georgia in the national championship game. I mean, you just get that sense from Taulia as well. Like nothing rattles him. I mean, he was, when I saw him a couple months ago in Atlanta for the Nike camp, I mean, it was maybe high 30s, low 40s that day. And, it was definitely not ideal weather for any quarterback, and especially one who's lived in Hawaii for the majority of his life. I mean, and he still looked like a quarterback that was very comfortable in that climate. I mean, he was definitely one of the top quarterbacks in attendance. So, they definitely just don't let adversity get to them. So that's definitely something that quarterbacks, you want your quarterbacks to have. And I think both Tua and Taulia have that about them.
Let me ask you, when you look at these camps, what's upcoming for these recruits as they'll showcase their talent? I know spring football going on a lot of places right now throughout the state of Alabama, but then we got camps that'll be upcoming, these Elite 11 camps, and so many. We could go through Under Armour, All-American, all these different type of all-star games.
Yeah. Well, next month, Alabama will have its summer camps. There are none right now in July, so they're hoping to get all those guys, all their top targets on campus next month to compete. And at that time, we'll definitely have a better understanding of who actually is a top target and who's not. Because I think Alabama's offered, over 200 prospects in the 2019 class. And obviously, not everybody can commit. And we're still unsure of who actually is the top target. And summer camps is definitely the time where we find out who actually Alabama wants and who actually they're going to still covet come the fall. At this time last year, we didn't even know that, Jalen Waddle, who signed with Alabama on signing day, was a top target. I mean, he emerged as one of Alabama's top wide receiver targets during that summer camp session. So I'm sure more names will emerge next month as these kids start getting to Tuscaloosa and competing in front of the staff. But as far as other camps, I mean, like you said, these Under Armour, Nike camps are still ongoing. The opening is in late June to early July. A lot of Alabama commitments are already invited to that. And in my opinion, I think it's the best high school football camp in the country. So there will be a lot of Alabama commitments at that event, and it's important because, when Tua's class was there, Najee was there, Alex Leatherwood, Vandarius Cowan, and so forth and so on. And that was really the point where those guys really developed a close relationship with each other. All those guys were there recruiting other uncommitted guys. So the more Alabama commitments at the opening, the better it is, because pretty much every single top high school football player in the country is at that event. And if you have, 10, 12 Alabama commitments at that event, it's definitely a good thing because they can get in the ears of all these other kids who are still undecided.
Chris, you were there at Grayson High School just a couple of days ago, and you had a chance to talk with Kevin Harris. I know you got an article there on SECCountry.com. I'll read you the title. Why new Alabama commit says he has a bone to pick with Georgia. Explain.
Yeah, Kevin tried to commit to Georgia during his sophomore year. Obviously, it's very young to make a college decision, but sometimes these kids are ready to make up their mind and they know where they would like to go. I mean, Kevin had a verbal offer from Georgia. And as I said, Alabama has offered over 200 prospects already in the 2019 class. Not everybody can commit if they wanted to. Kevin found himself in that situation. He tried to commit to Georgia. There was a misunderstanding of him actually needing to camp because there just wasn't much varsity film on Kevin at that time. Like I said, he was a sophomore, so there was only one season under his belt. So he tried to commit to Georgia. At the time, Kevin Shear was the defensive coordinator, and Coach Shear told Kevin and his father that he needed to come to camp, but there was no more camps to be had because he was actually en route to another camp down in Florida, an event that Ray Lewis was putting on. So Kevin was out of luck at that point. And it was just an embarrassing situation because, for him at least, because he had told all his friends, he told his family that he was committing, but he didn't understand that he had to camp before actually making that decision. So he just felt discouraged and embarrassed by the whole situation because, like I said, he did tell his family and his friends that he was going to Georgia. And after that point, they pretty much decided that Georgia just wasn't the right fit for them. Obviously, they didn't feel as strongly as they had thought originally. So he definitely hasn't forgotten about that. He had a really good junior season. It was one of the reasons why all these other schools started to come in the mix. So he's definitely not going to forget that when and if Alabama plays Georgia by the time he gets to Tuscaloosa next season. I mean, I'm sure Kevin is definitely going to let his anger out in that game.
Chris, let me go back to the Grayson 4 here for just a couple of minutes. You were there on location. Auburn gets one. What is it? Texas A&M gets one, I believe. Alabama gets one. But Georgia, when you talk about them, is that a little bit of concern that some of those kids, was that 30 minutes from their campus maybe? Is it 30, 40 minutes? Grayson High School there. Is that a concern for Georgia? Have they lost some momentum locally?
No, I wouldn't say they've lost momentum locally. If anybody, Owen Popo, the five-star linebacker, chose Auburn over Georgia. I mean, that was definitely a loss for Georgia. But, I don't think Georgia is really in a bad spot. Yes, they missed on Popo. They didn't want Kevin Harris when he committed to Alabama a few days ago. Kenyatta Watson, who chose Texas, was not considered by Georgia. And then Wanye Morris, who chose Tennessee over Auburn, was not a Georgia target. So when you look at it that way, I mean, they didn't really lose out on anybody out of those four except Popo, who was actually wanted by Georgia. So I don't think Georgia is in a bad spot. I mean, they're still going to get the majority of the guys they want in state because a lot of these kids grew up wanting to go to Georgia and playing for Georgia like Kevin Harris did. And Georgia is still going to have one of the best recruiting classes in the country when February rolls around.